Viewers, we have an exclusive news break coming in. Republic has accessed key documents that expose a Pakistan-sponsored junket for anti-India US Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. She had visited Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir in 2022. The financial disclosure that Republic TV has accessed reveals that a cash-strapped Pakistan funded Ilhan Omar's 7-day propaganda junket in 2022. This is a US House of Representatives member from the US state of Minnesota. She is known for taking anti-India stances, vehement anti-India stances, and being biased, many say, against India. And it turns out that her junket to Pakistan last year was sponsored by the Pakistani government. That included food and lodging as well for 7 days. The Indian Ministry of External Affairs had spoken about her visit to Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, calling her out for violating India's territorial integrity in doing so. It had called out her politics over the matter, and now it turns out that Ilhan Omar was funded for this junket by the Pakistan government at the time. There are a number of revelations that have come in. She's also in hot water over a junket to Qatar. We have our senior executive editor Abhishek Kapoor also joining us. Abhishek, if you could shed more light on this controversy, why it is such a key and big revelation about who sponsored her junket to Pakistan and POK.
Okay, so Ankit, give me some time. We have to explain who Ilhan Omar is for the Indian viewer. She is a congresswoman, essentially a member of the US Congress from the Democratic Party. She is in fact part of the far left of the Democrat establishment in the United States. She actually belongs to Democrat Farmer Labor Party, which is an ally of the main Democrat Party. And so she represents the Minnesota 5th Congressional District in the US Congress on the Capitol. Now that's Ilhan Omar. Now because she is left, far left, she projects herself as a progressive Muslim, but then she takes positions which are about pushing in political Islamism. So in this case, why it is important to bring out this aspect of her funding of Qatar visit by the Qatari government and the Pakistan visit by the Pakistani government is because she goes to Qatar to watch football matches during the World Cup. Now, that's a personal trip because she's a soccer fan. But then there is some arrangement by which she goes and some other congressmen also, congresswomen also, go and watch matches in Qatar, in Doha. But what is important is, Ilhan Omar is known for taking political positions which attack US foreign policy, because she believes that the US policies, specifically the foreign policy, is outsourced to certain lobbies, like in the case of foreign policy to the Jews, to the Israelis. Now, Ilhan Omar, she takes the hospitality of Qatar and hence perhaps remains silent on Qatari funding of Muslim Brotherhood, for example, or the Qatari funding of Hamas, but she pans Saudi Arabia for its human rights records. So obviously she is taking a partisan position, and hence she comes out as a politician who's willing to rent for a cause, rent her services for a cause. And so it turns out in the case of Pakistan also, she takes the hospitality of the Pakistani government, she visits Pakistan, goes to Pak-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and then takes a very public anti-India position to the extent that last month when Prime Minister was on a state visit to the United States and was to address the US Congress or joint session, she boycotted it. She carried out a parallel briefing on human rights violations in India, and she spearheaded a resolution condemning Indian handling of human rights. So it clearly comes out that the one who pays the piper calls the tune happens to be the case with Ilhan Omar, who is willing to provide her services for lobbying, for taking public positions, provided some sort of funding comes in. Because remember, going to visit Doha for watching World Cup matches of football because you are a fan of soccer means you should be willing, because it's a private visit, you should be willing to spend money and go. But you are taking hospitality, and then you are nuancing your public political position. Based on that funding is a conclusion that is being drawn not only in India but in the United States as well. She is someone who takes very strong, woke, extra left public positions. One example of which I gave, Ankit, of she panning the US foreign policy for being pro-Israeli on the one hand, while on the other, she is happy taking hospitality of Qatar, which not only pans Israel and is not part of the Abraham Accords, but then takes a position against Saudi Arabia and UAE, for example, which are trying to sort of, control the Middle East fires, tone down the rhetoric. They have signed the Abraham Accords. So I think this is very important that this connection comes out through the US congressional filings, where finally Ilhan Omar, after avoiding responding to queries by the American press itself, has come out now with the fact that her trips to Qatar and Pakistan were funded by these respective governments, and the connection between that funding and the possibility of her being soft on Qatar despite its funding of Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas, and being soft on Pakistan despite its terror antecedents. That's the essential story, Ankit, as it comes out of these US congressional filings, with Ilhan Omar's funding becoming very clear from that.
So, Abhishek, when she visited Pakistan last year, the Ministry of External Affairs had said, and I quote, "If such a politician wishes to practice her narrow-minded politics at home, that may be her business, but violating our territorial integrity and sovereignty in its pursuit makes it ours. This visit is condemnable." So the MEA had called out her visit, and now we come to find out who had paid for it, who had sponsored it. And this on a day, Abhishek, when the Pakistan Election Commission is saying that there is almost no possibility of Pakistan holding elections of any sort, free, fair, unfair, democratic, undemocratic. This year, it can only be held in February. Yesterday also, we saw Anthony Blinken sort of almost taunt Pakistan in terms of holding free and fair elections. And yet you have politicians in America who take moral positions pontificating to India on behalf of Pakistan. Is this not a big blow to them and their agendas?
Absolutely, absolutely. So the story is not about she taking some funding, her air ticket or her lodging, food being sponsored by the Qatari government and the Pakistani government. There might be some arrangements. For example, in this case, it seems there is a mutual cultural exchange program existing between the government of Qatar and that of United States, under which the US leadership, the congressmen, congresswomen, senators, can access this hospitality without in any way reflecting on their conduct when it comes to their, positions vis-a-vis policy in the United States government, in the United States Congress and Senate and so on. But in the case of Ilhan Omar, because she takes very pronounced positions on US policy, on Israel, on India, it seems a case of selective positioning as it comes out, because while you can take Qatari hospitality, but then you cannot let that influence your position vis-a-vis Qatar's funding of Muslim Brotherhood, on which you are silent, your position on Qatar's funding of Hamas, on which you are silent, and parallelly you pan Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates for their human rights, while you think that funding Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas is not any violation of anybody's human rights. So I think these are some aspects. Again, on Pakistan, for example, it's okay if you take Pakistani hospitality, but to go to Pak-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, you are actually making a statement that, you don't care a damn about India's concerns and sensitivities when it comes to our territorial integrity and sovereignty. So I think that was the reason why this story had to be brought out and explained to the viewers, and that's what we are doing. She went to Pakistan and to the Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir in the month of April last year, and that was prominently covered at that time. The Pakistanis thought that they have a coup because, remember, in the United States, as it happens, Ankit, lobbying per se is not seen as bad. So you can do that, but then don't take holier than thou position. That's something which should become clear after these revelations that come out in annual House financial disclosure that every US congressman and senator has to make as part of a legal mandate in the United States. So the fact is that in the month of December, because she went to Qatar to participate in the World Cup in the month of October, November, and in the month of December, there were queries sent to Ilhan Omar's office by the American media also, including the likes of New York Post, for example, but then that remained unanswered, which means there was also an intent to hide the connection of funding by the Qatari government of Ilhan Omar's trip, and that's something which really puts the spotlight on whether Ilhan Omar is as innocent, as clear about her human rights position as she projects, or is it actually a rent-a-cost kind of platform that she has become, and increasingly lopsided towards extreme left positions that she takes in US politics itself. Ankit.
Absolutely. Abhishek Kapoor, I thank you very much for shedding so much insight on this story and putting it in concise terms for our viewers. We are tracking this very closely, viewers. Ilhan Omar has some answers to give.